For more information on this topic, I refer you to Chapter 4 of the prescribed textbook. On this slide, you are introduced to the policy cycle. It starts with a policy definition, then policy formulation, reformulation, and next agenda setting, policy establishment, policy implementation, and then assessment of the policy. As seen in week 4 when we covered pesticides and other organic compounds, this is an example of adoption of a policy, namely the adoption of pesticide measurement policy for South Africa. Here is an example of the National Policy on Environmental Health. You can Google this if you want to read it. Policy implementation is very important. You can watch again this short video that you watched in week 1. It is futile to have policies, but then no capacity to actually implement them. Here is an example of an international policy on air pollution. You can Google this report. It is on the Convention of Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution. You can watch this short video on the UN Environmental Programme. It's a regulatory agency on the international level. Another example of a regulatory agency on an international level is that of the IPCC, the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change. You can watch this short video. The WHO is another example of a regulatory agency on the international level. You can watch this short video. On this slide are some regulatory agencies on the national level. You can search for their websites. See if you can find regulatory agencies on the provincial and local government level in South Africa. Here are some suggestions to look for. A good website with all the environmental legislation in the country is that of the Centre of Environmental Rights. You can Google to find it. Now some examples of South African environmental legislation. An important one is the Bill of Rights. That is Section 24 of the South African Constitution. You can also Google it if you want to read it completely. Here are some examples of legislation by the Department of Water Affairs. The National Health Act, Act 61 of 2003, by the Department of Health also covers environmental and occupational health. You can again Google this to read the Act completely. An important piece of legislation by the Department of Health, namely the Public Health Institute of South Africa Act 1 of 2020, came into effect on the 7th of August 2020 and received very little media coverage on TV or radio. You can Google this act to read more about it. An important act by the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries is that of the National Environmental Management Act, Act 107 of 1998. This act covers soil, air and water pollution. It also covers the declaration of air pollution priority areas. You can Google this act to read it completely. Here is some research at the School of Health Systems and Public Health on the Healthful Air Pollution Priority Area. Dr. Oletola and I wrote up a blue article for the conversation. You can find it here and read it. On this slide you can see the National Ambient Air Quality Standards that are enforced by the National Environmental Management Act that I referred to a few slides back. Another very important environmental legislation is that of the Carbon Tax Act that was gazetted in 2019. This tax is basically a tax on energy, as most of South Africa's carbon emissions are from energy generation and the industrial use of energy. As much of 80% of South Africa's primary energy is powered by coal. You can watch these videos on the Carbon Tax Act. International public health security relies on the appropriate and timely management of public health risks, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which in turn depend on the effective national capacities and international and inter-sectoral collaboration. The International Health Regulation comprises a legal instrument specifically designed to support the attainment of this goal. For more information on the International Health Regulations, I refer you to these 3 short videos. I hope you found this PowerPoint presentation interesting on environmental policy and regulations.